let's welcome our speaker, John, to talk about the NIST CSF Maturity Toolkit.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I have to tell you, with XDR, EDR, AI, quantum, I think the folks at NIST would be incredibly thrilled to see the room packed like this. So from the not sexy side of cyber, thank you for spending the next hour with me. So let's see here. There we go. You've probably seen this a dozen times already. So just a little bit about me. I've been doing this for about 30 years. I like to say I've been doing it since it was before the cool thing to do. 18-year CISO. I write a blog, and why I'm here today is because we developed the NIST CSF toolkit. So when we look at the toolkit, there's a couple things that. So just real quick, right now I'm semi-retired. I spend a lot of time doing virtual CISO work, and specifically NIST CSF assessments for my clients. There's a big misconception about what NIST CSF really is. It really is based on a series of good industry practices. It is not a hardcore set of rules, with some exceptions. If you're a couple industries that, when the regulators come in, they really do expect you to kind of be on point with everything in the NIST. Generally, though, it's just a series of guidelines. What it's not is really something you must follow. I've gone into sites, I've gone into enterprises far too many times where they're trying to be hardcore in this, and their businesses are ready to just throw them out the door, right? That's not what this is about. This is about slowly understanding the risk that's in your enterprise and how to address it over time. The other thing is really not, because I get asked this question by boards a lot, is does this give us something to compare how we stand to our peers? And it is not, right? This is truly looking in on yourself, figuring out where you want to be as an enterprise when it comes to risk management, and the toolkit helps you get there, right? The CSF helps you get there. The toolkit just helps you implement CSF a little bit easier. So what is the CSF Maturity Toolkit? Back in 2015, when the CSF first came out, I was a CISO for a startup. We were building a stock exchange. Really had no real good, right? We didn't want to go out and buy kind of the big, massive Archer GRC kind of tool. So when we looked at the CSF, the regulators were really pushing us to do it, really had to kind of get in line with it really quick. So when we started putting it together, we realized that there were some complexities around it, right? You couldn't just kind of go through and fill out the boxes and kind of get an understanding where you were, because it was really around, when I sat down with my IT folks, and I was like, well, do we do this with identities or whatever it is? They're like, well, the policies say we do, so yeah, right? And it's like, well, but what do we actually do? So that we uncovered a lot of that while when we were first starting working with the CSF. So it kind of matured, and we used it internally for a while. When CSF 1.1 came out, I kind of threw it on my blog, and I said, hey, whoever, I find this helpful. If anybody else needs it, here it is. Kind of rolled from there, loaded the privacy framework into it a little bit later. And when 2.0 came out in 2024, again, I'm just updating a little tool fundamentally it's a spreadsheet, right? Didn't think really it was that big of a deal. My website crashed, right? I literally couldn't keep my site up for 3 days because so many people were trying to download it and get the update. We fixed that, by the way. It's on GitHub now, so all good. So when we look at the CSF itself, it gives us these kind of 4 tiers, right? They're really vague, left for a lot of interpretation, and really didn't align with anything my technology folks were trying to do. They were very, very, again, because it was a highly regulated SEC environment, they were very much focused on using standards that we could measure with KPIs and really kind of highlight and track where they were from a technology maturity perspective, operations and procedures. So, you know, when we sat down and looked at it, we went, okay, well, they're using a different scale. They're 1 to 5. We have 4. When you read these, you go, well, how do we get them to match, right? Because the board wanted to see both, right? They wanted equal, you know, understanding of security's here, technology's here, but when you put them together, they really didn't kind of fit. So when you really kind of get into the interpretation and really kind of look into it, you go, conceptually, I get the ideas, but functionally, they don't work. And again, if we start looking at, well, functionally, I might do something in my policies, but my day-to-day practices are very different, or could be very different. So that's why we kind of built the toolkit as it is. So why policy versus practice? We've all seen this before, right? Multi-factor authentication, strong authentication, we have to have it on all accounts. Okay, IT, it's on all accounts, right? Well, it is, except our executives won't use it because they don't want to have to type in a code. And the 12, 15, 20-year-old AS400 that's running millions of dollars of annual revenue doesn't support it, right? So anybody who's using that, they don't use it either. So when you look at the policy is very clear. It says everyone shall. But when you look at practice, never, right? So measuring the difference between the two really uncovers a lot of issues, especially for security leaders. You start really understanding the risk around what your policies say, and what you do every day. The other kind of good example is, and I'm sure we all deal with this one, right? Critical vulnerabilities are patched with 72 hours, period, no questions. You're not patching your production environment without adequate testing, you know, and all the things that go around that. When you look at it, okay, we have quarterly patch updates, and that's fine. From a risk perspective, if you're comfortable with that, great. Your policy says one thing, but what you do day to day is something very different. So when we built the toolkit, we really started thinking about, okay, this is critical. We really, really need to start tracking what we do versus what we say we do. Especially, again, when the regulators were coming in going, okay, your policy says this, show me the evidence. And we really quickly learned we couldn't. So when we understand that, you know, the operational imperatives, we were building, you know, an options equity exchange, and our go-to-market strategy was, we are going to be the fastest in the world, period. We're talking millions of transactions per second to keep up with the markets, right? How do we operationalize our policies to align with the business drivers on why we're even doing this whole stock exchange thing anyway? So as we were going through it, you know, again, tech, network engineering, app dev, what do? Policies say we do this, this is our answer. So I'd get the CSF questionnaire back, and it's all 4s and 5s. I'm like, love it, folks, we're not that good, right? We're not 4s and 5s. So when you start digging into it, you start realizing that, you know, because policies, we wrote them first, how do we unwind this, and how do we truly figure out where our risk is from a security perspective? So the one thing that the technology folks really did thrive on and really kind of loved, what's called the SCI CMM, the Capability Maturity Model, right? So developed at Carnegie Mellon in the 80s, it really is kind of the de facto standard in most large enterprises on how they measure their own ability, right? Where they are in a maturity scale. It really does, when you sit down and look at the levels of different maturity, they really do align very well to a lot of the common KPIs and metrics that are captured in an enterprise. So when we thought about it, we were like, okay, we don't have to use those 4 tiers that NIST suggests we do, right? They're just guidance. So how do we come up with a way to integrate these 5 tiers into you know, the NIST work. So we basically sat down and said, okay, what do we want to do, right? We want to find a way to measure, identify the gaps, not just gaps in our technology or gaps in our policy, but gaps between the two. And ultimately, that's what the Maturity Toolkit is kind of matured into, ironically. One of the most powerful things about the toolkit is it is easily customizable and, in fact, encouraged to be customized for every single enterprise, right? The goal of it is to really align the security and risk side with the technology side. So when we think about it, how do we do that, right? So really kind of maturity levels need to be purposeful. Let's just build this out. Actionable, right? They need to have a purpose. We need to be able to take action on them, right? You kind of like those policies that are written that nobody kind of lives up to, right? Because they're just kind of fluff. Trackable. This is key. Because again, if you're in a regulated environment, you need to be able to provide the evidence of how you're managing your risk. So the ability to track your maturity growth over time is critical. And it's got to be continuous, right? It's not oh, look, it's not a vulnerability test, right? Oh, here's a snapshot of my vulnerabilities today. I'll go fix them and be done with it, right? It's really around continual improvement. And that's the one thing that the CMM, the SCI CMM, really does drive. It's around continual improvement. It's not a go spend $200 million to build this world-class security program. It's about doing what's right for the business over time. So when we look at the toolkit, it's really around defining the maturity levels that fit with your enterprise. Now, we have 2 different parts of that, right? We have the policy side, and we have the practice side, which we'll get to in a minute. But it really is around aligning these 5 areas to what your IT team does. Or even coming together with your IT team, if you want to elevate it a little bit. You know, maybe your IT team is thrilled that they have, you know, they consider themselves a 5 because they have 10% exceptions. Well, is that where the company really wants to go? So maybe you come together, maybe you just adopt theirs and you know, mature it over time. But it's really around understanding what they're doing, how they're doing it, right? How long does it take them to reopen or reset a password, right? All their help desk metrics, all their help desk tickets, very easily tracked. They report on them. Their KPIs are based on them. Probably their management bonuses are based on them. And it's really around that kind of process. When you break it down, right, we kind of made the early determination that 3 was the baseline, right? So a 3 is we never, ever, ever want to see anything lower than a 3. For us at the time, it really kind of fit the model of where we wanted to go. Now, you'll see that these are very different, right? So the policy maturity levels and the practice levels have different minimums, have different number of exceptions. You know, in a process, a level 2 is repeatable, right? But it's ad hoc. It's not documented. It's not predictable. So what we want for a baseline is a predictable, formal process. That's the median, right? So again, defining these processes for policy, defining these maturity levels for process or policy is really what makes the toolkit as powerful as it is, because it's all based upon what you want to do in your enterprise. So again, these are kind of what we saw there, but this is literally a snapshot of the tool. We go through these. I will tell you, without a shadow of a doubt, coming to agreement on these 5 things is the hardest part about doing the assessment. Because you are going to get pushback from IT, you're going to get pushback from business, you're going to have people go, you know what, that looks good, I like that, until they see the first draft of the assessment when everything's red. And then they go, well, hold on, maybe we don't need to be, a level 3 or a level 4. So understanding that, it's a very iterative process, right? The one thing I would strongly suggest, the very first time you do one of these assessments, pick a business unit. Do a small group, right? Just go there, walk through it, understand the challenges. You'll be able to come up with, you'll get yourself 80% there for your maturity levels for the rest of the enterprise, but it'll be a manageable scope, right? So, as part of defining maturity, you define the target, right? So where do you want to be as a company? Now, the reality is where you are today will not be the same as where you want to be in a couple years, right? Defining this target score, and again, when I do these now for my clients, I never let them change a 3. We are a 3. That's your target. Because if you can't at least be a 3, we have some bigger concerns. Okay, so when we look down the target line, everything when we start is a 3. And I highly recommend you do the same thing, right? So when you think back to the previous slides around defining that maturity, what would be your absolute, as a risk professional, what would be your absolute baseline of where we should be, right? Is it 15% exceptions? Is it a 48-hour password or account reset? Whatever it is. Figuring that baseline with the defined maturity levels, honestly, once you get past that part, you'll get pushback at the end when everybody sees, oh, we have more red than we thought we were better, and we have policies that say, oh, what do you mean we don't live up to our policies? It's quite a legitimate surprise to most executives. Getting through this is going to be the biggest challenge. And honestly, you'll spend more time here than figuring out the questionnaire. So let's talk about the assessment. The toolkit, whenever there is an update to the CSF, it is literally, we take the spreadsheet from the CSF and we put it in the tool. It is literally verbatim. When I pull up the demo, you're going to see it's got the NIST headings on it. It is 100% owned and copyrighted and whatever by NIST. Taking absolutely zero credit for that. The good news of that is it's very transportable. Right? So you know that you can literally go download the spreadsheet from the NIST website yourself, and you'll see they're literally side by side identical. And that was the goal, right? The goal wasn't to try to maintain anything or make this overly complex. And importantly, be able to give you something that you can not track over a short amount of time, but a long amount of time, right? This tool is still in use where we developed it. And they have years worth of seeing maturity scale up year after year. You do an M&A, you can do this on your merger, right? On the people you're acquiring. And you can manage that and watch how their maturity grows over time in light of your entire enterprise. So it's not, as big, you're not boiling the ocean. You don't have to do your whole enterprise. And in fact, again, we encourage you don't. But really doing the assessment and getting comfortable with it and really driving the results will help you kind of build a long-term strategy and a long-term program. So, if we look at literally, this is PR.AAO1 from the NIST CSF, okay? Basically, it talks about identity management, what you do with accounts. I am getting old because I can't read that anymore. But again, when you look at the policy maturity, policy or standard exists, okay? Hasn't been updated in 2 years. Nobody's looked at it in 2 years. The one thing about the world we live in is policies need to be reviewed regularly. I know people hate doing it. It's the worst thing ever. Have to do it because I'll guarantee you, if you haven't looked at your policies in 18 months, there's no consideration for every bit of AI that's on that show floor, right? We live in a world of constant change, and our policies should reflect that. Now, I do say policies in the royal perspective. Standards, business practices, standard operating procedures, all of those things should be updated very regularly. So when we look at the policy maturity, it's 2.0. So yeah, we have one. Really doesn't kind of reflect what we do. So, okay, maybe it's a 2. But yet, when we look at the practice, there is a formal policy, right? Our IT folks have done a really good job on staying on top of things. They rolled out a new whatever solution. They updated the practices and the formal process to align with that. So in that case, we do better, and this is the rare case, where we do better than our policies say we do. In this one, it's kind of inverse, right? We've gone through a policy review. The standards exist. There's very few exceptions. Honestly, the 3% exception over any kind of business process is not a bad one. Everything's documented, it's approved, so we're kind of in a good place here. When we look at the practice, yes, there's a formal process, and the evidence is collected, although their exceptions are about 10%, right? So we have this slight, difference between the two. Now, in my opinion, these two numbers should always be the same. They never are. But that's when you start looking at policies versus what you do, you really do want them to align. This isn't saying your policies are right and your practices are wrong or vice versa. The point is they should align. So we've seen now in a couple of examples where they're different from each other, right? So how do we get them to align? Those differences are the things that bite us, right? They're the things that get us in trouble. Because the security teams walking around going, hey, everybody's got 2-factor, we don't have to worry about it. When in reality, maybe 20% don't. That disconnect was really the driver around a lot of this. So, again, policies exist. Nobody has this problem, right? Documented policies, but our practices don't even remotely follow them. This is the bigger problem, right? So these happen more frequently than you would imagine, right? I would point out one thing, and that is personal opinion. You should never see a 5, ever. I've never been in a place where a 5 was legitimate. I've never been in a place where, well, 0s are kind of legit. Ones are bad because they happen kind of frequently. But the reality is, if you send this to a team, you're going to get back a lot of 5s and 4s. We're God. We're great. This is awesome. Temper that, right? Again, our job as risk professionals is to understand why they're answering the way they are. 4s are rare. Honestly, I cannot picture a time, remember a time in the last probably 6 years, 5-6 years, where somebody could convince me a 5 was right. Accept that. So again, policies and standards. 2, formal process exists for practices. Evidence and metrics are collected. Less than 1% exceptions are documented. We can, again, adjust this as needed. This, again, since it all ties back to your maturity, what you want to do, you have that flexibility. But don't make it so weak that 5s are rampant or 4s are rampant, right? That's not what this is for. You can sugarcoat this. You can, make everybody happy. You can make your board happy. You won't have any reds. You won't have any 1s or 2s. But really, ultimately, that's, not what we're here for. So when we look at the results, we break it down by the CSF categories. Again, the target score is the target score, but this first time we'll leave it at 3. And we can go through and see time by time what was better in each category. Now, the reality, it's kind of easy to see, right? No coloring means it's at target. Green coloring means it's above target. Red coloring means it's under target. Makes it very easy. And the spider chart, honestly, literally it's a copy and paste into your board deck. You'll get questions, but this is what they love. They don't want to understand. They don't want the breakdown. Most of them. They don't want that breakdown about business continuity over incident response and what's the difference between the 5 purple categories. That's not a discussion they want to have. They want to see this, okay? And they want to see, hopefully, most of the reports above the target line. Oh, there we go. So you can see here, right? Targets 3, scores 2, right? That very easy to highlight where the focus is, right? It's also very easy to highlight when you go in and go, well, we need budget to fix that. They go, okay, we get it. It's not a, I'd like to do this, or I think we need to do that over here. There's a hard score that goes along that can drive your budgets. This is one of the most valuable things when I was a CISO that I loved about this, is it was a very simple conversation with the executive management or the boards. What would you like me to focus on, right? There's this one, and this one. A couple down here. What do you want me to focus on? And I'll give you the price tag for it. We'll get it done next year, okay? You want us to do all of them? Awesome. But let's be clear. I'm not going to be spending money up here. I'm going to be spending money down here. Being able to change that and watch that grow over time, and giving the board a very hard example of, you gave me this number is now up here, builds your own credibility. It works wonders. Right there, that is just one of the best budget justification tools that I have personally come across. We could use a whole lot of, all the big cloud-based solutions and all that other kind of stuff. You're using an industry standard, the CSF. You've tailored it to your business. So hopefully your businesses have all chimed in on it and are comfortable with the maturity levels. So now you're sitting in front of the, pitching your budget going, okay, if you're comfortable with this, I'm comfortable with it, right? Our jobs are not to resolve, but to articulate. I can fix that if you want to spend the money. It's a great message, and it makes the conversation so much easier, right? It really makes, they get it, they understand it, okay? Because if you do this with the other risks that they deal with, whether it's financial risk, whether it's physical risk, these are the decisions they make, right? I don't want to spend money on cool stuff up here. I want to fix the big problems that might impact $30 million worth of revenue, right? I want to go back and I want to get multi-factor on that AS400. I'm going to figure out how to do it. Or maybe that is a key indicator on the final nail in the coffin of the AS400 and convinces them to move off of it. Not likely, but maybe. kind of spoke through that already. So I kind of mentioned a little bit ago that this is not a here and now thing, right? It's very much a year-over-year thing. And certainly as a CISO, my bonuses were based on a lot of this, right? My bonuses were based on how the program is maturing over time. Now, obviously, there are a lot of ways to measure that. Having this, right, walking in, doing the assessment, and understanding where we are, and then when you get to year 3 or year 4 or year 5, you can very easily articulate the maturation of your program. Now, I will caution one thing. If you are going in someplace new and do an assessment like this, just be cautious, right? Whenever you start kind of, especially doing this, you're going to turn over a lot of stones, right? Well, they said we were great, right? They said we were taken care of. And you don't want to necessarily be the bearer of that bad news, but apples to apples comparison, right? That's the key. You can hire one of the big firms to come in and do an assessment and tell you where you stand. You can hire a different one, bigger firms, come in 3 years later and tell you where you stand. It's not apples to apples. Even if you hire the same firm, it's not apples to apples. Different consultants view different things different ways, right? This literally gives you your apples to apples comparison on how your program's maturing. So, real quick note. So this is kind of a fairly new feature, the year-over-year reporting. So we've kind of collected a lot of this data and built another tab into the tool. Unfortunately, I just wasn't able to get it uploaded before today. The GitHub is kind of on the last slide. Tomorrow it'll be up. So to get everything, just kind of give it 12 hours. So the year-over-year reporting literally will help you articulate that message, okay? So instead of just, these being where you are right now, these are the year-over-year scores that allow you to track it, okay? So again, if you do this for a business unit or a subsidiary, you do a year over year over year, you can very easily see how the maturity of the subsidiary is moving along. So before we get into the demo, I mentioned that the privacy framework was added a number of years ago, uses the same exact model, okay? Absolutely, the format's a little different, the privacy framework format's a little different. Other than that, same concept, same logic, everything is there. I was going to spend some time going into the privacy framework. However, the new one's coming out sometime this year, okay? So when you download the tool, it's the older one. It'll be very comfortable. You'll see it kind of all aligns together. But if you want to, just keep an eye on the GitHub or whatever, but when the new privacy framework comes out, it'll be updated as well. Okay. So, any questions? Mics are up here.
Hi, great presentation.
Thank you.
I will apply that. Do you recommend using that for each department, for the complete enterprise? How would you start it?
So the question was, what would I recommend, how would I recommend starting it? Oh, there we go. So my recommendation is find a small part of your company that's manageable, right? Like I said, doing the maturity part takes a lot of, it takes a lot of work, right? You'll find there's a lot of opinions and a lot of perspectives when it comes to figuring out where you want to be on the scale. Do something small, right? Sit down, and in fact, you can even pick parts, right? So you could just do the governance part. Just do the identity management part. Just do your incident response part so you know where your incident response plans are.
So who should judge the maturity? Is it me as a CISO? Is it the IT team together? How do you get to the judgment?
So when you get here, okay. So when you get here, okay, it's not here anymore, but okay. So these are the discussion points, right? So when you sit down, you go, okay, we don't want to be anything below a 3, right? As a CISO, you go, my job is to make sure we never get below a 3, okay? Those requirements, right? How do you define that policy? How do you know if a formal process exists? 100% working with the rest of your team, right? Your IT team, your networking team, your governance, if you have an enterprise risk management team, right? So you can't do this. You can't do this by yourself, right? This is absolutely something that I don't want to say brings the organization together because there'll be heated discussions. Thank you. But it's absolutely something that maybe you as a CISO go, you know what, we can't be any lower than a 3. Okay, so what does that mean to your organization, right? Does it mean, we do patch we patch endpoints every month? Maybe, right? Does that mean our exceptions have to be under 8% instead of 1%, right? Possibly, right? I wouldn't go in as a CISO and say, these are my mandates. I would say, as a CISO, we don't want to be below a 3, right? So how do we do that, right? What is right and what is wrong? But it is absolutely, you can, again, when I do these, when I interview people doing these assessments, I interview everyone. I interview the application development team, the infrastructure team, the IT help desk, everyone I can get my hands on, I will interview because they all have different perspectives and all have different knowledge of what reality is in the enterprise. Right? So bringing all that together is the hardest part. You as a CISO doing the assessment or your team doing the assessment is easy because all you do is refer back to these. We all agreed to this. We all agreed to a 3% exception, okay? So when I go in through this, I'm gonna say, okay, show me you only have 3% exceptions. If they go, well, we only have 1, well, that's great, you're a level 4, right? But if you have 20% exceptions, then you're a level 2. So getting that hardest part is really this. Doing the actual assessment is a cakewalk compared to getting through that part of it. So any other questions? I'll hop into this or, yeah?
Too far. Okay, so I see that you have a rating for implementing it, for operate each one of the controls, and you have all of the questions that I can find the maturities. Is there a benchmark on the industry so I know which is the maturity I should be if I want to compare with the other companies on the same?
There isn't, right? And one of the earlier slides, right? So the CSF isn't about comparing to other organizations, right?
Okay.
It's really about looking inward and figuring out where you are as a company and where you want to be, right? Mm-hmm. There's an organization that was called the ISF that used to issue these benchmark metrics years ago, but they're impossible, right? I've never worked for 2 enterprises, even they're the same size, yep, even that have the same expectation of what they do.
Yeah, even among the departments itself, I do have different maturities between HR and development and so on.
So I had, my last CISO role, I had 12 countries. I worked for a mobile phone provider, and we had operations in 12 different countries. Drastic differences between the countries.
Of
right?
course.
And that's why I never once presented an overall assessment of the company. This is what Columbia is like. This is what this one's like. This is what that one's like, right?
Yeah,
So,
The question is more towards where do you want to be? Because C-level is going to ask you, where do I want to be? Is it a 5 for everything? It's not.
Right,
So
and that's exactly the point, right? It's about where you want to be as a company, because, and the truth is, where you want to be will change, right? Because where you want to be now,
Yep.
you know, it's just, okay, let's put out the fires, let's fix all of the gaps, right? But in a few years from now, maybe you want that 1%, you know, that maybe that's a long-term goal of yours. And again, understanding that, and all that flushes out as part of this maturity discussion, understanding that helps you build your 3 to 5 year program, right? Now you go, okay, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, and over the 5 years, we're gonna see all these numbers in the 4s or 3s or whatever.
Yeah, and one of the main questions I get is to move from 3 to 4, what's the budget? What's the investment?
Well, right, and that's exactly the point, right? If moving from 3 to 4 is you know, buying a multi-factor,
Yep.
or you know, having someone come in and write an incident response plan, right, and do a tabletop every year, that moves you from 2 to 4 or from 3 to
Yep.
4, right? It depends on, because again, the CSF, I mean, there's 213 different questions.
Yep.
Right? So one question that's a 1 could skew the whole model, could skew the whole category, right?
Correct.
So how do you, if you fix that 1 to a 3, well, there's, I'm sure, a price to that, right? And you don't have to worry about fixing, you know, all the others in the category. And that's what comes out of this. And again, that's the reason we break out policy and practice, right?
Just confirm.
Anything else?
But like you said, sometimes the practice score is higher than the reality. So would you recommend to sometime do a pen test or something like that, just to ensure that the score is a good one?
So certainly there are certain things that pen tests will uncover, right? Pen tests won't uncover, you know, they might uncover 2-factor problems, but you know, they're not going to uncover, you know, maybe they uncover app dev or patching. They don't uncover incident response. You know, there's a lot of things they don't. One of the earlier slides said a good maturity rating is continual, right? So it's not the once a year pen test.
Yeah.
It's coming up with metrics and KPIs, right? So to your point, this is kind of a snapshot in time. But every month, you should be reviewing and obtaining and reviewing the metrics that support those standards and those maturity levels, right? So it's much more about, you know, putting in the monthly reporting, saying, okay, you know, we had 12 exceptions this month and our target's 5, right? So how do we do that, right? So that's one of the big challenges is that rolls out of this is, it's not a, oh, go fix this and forget it. It's really about continually managing, monitoring kind of the maturity levels.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, no, go ahead. You're right.
Two questions. How do you mentioned you do a lot of interviews, look at different departments. How do you compare year to year the results? I mean, let's say you're in an immature environment, maybe not even a 1. Does it make sense to do this then? Because you're going to be struggling all along to prove how are you going to prove that this process is actually working?
So I would agree with that, right? And I kind of alluded to it a little bit before. If you walk into, you know, again, a startup, you know, or something that's very immature, you know, like for instance, you know, a lot of enterprises over the last, we'll call it 3 to 5 years, have moved away from in-house static code development to, you know, a DevOps model, right? So during that transition, this is all going to be turned upside down, right? So understanding where you are in that process. Now, at that same time, your help desk might be great, so do the help desk, right? So at least you start tracking that. But when you get to a point where we do nothing for business continuity, right? We never back up a thing. Well, okay, well, if that's the case, don't do it. Do it when they get to a point where they go, okay, we're starting to get evidence, we're starting to, you know, kind of build this program, then you start, because it also helps them track their progress, right? It makes them actually feel good when they start seeing that score go up. They go, we're doing the right thing.
So, yeah, okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
I had to write this one. So basically, like in recent years, we've noticed that the industry is kind of like heavily gamified with scorecards and grades and letters. From my perspective, from like incident response, during a breach, like no one's really asking you how did you compare to another company. They're asking how do you protect your organization.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm finding that I served a bunch of different companies who focus more on on scores. Like, how can we start to get the leadership to move to like the resilience of the actual program for their organization versus trying to compare themselves to other companies?
Yeah, and that's honestly, that's one of the main reasons this was built, right? It's all around, because there is no other companies, because there's not even anything even about the industry, right? It's really around where do we want to be, right? And how do we want to get there? So again, if we do choose to do it early on, right, and everybody's a 1 or a 2, right, and okay, well, we can invest X amount and we can move, these 3 things to a 3. And then the year after that, we move these 3 things to a 3, right? So understanding the resilience side of it and getting the buy-in from the business to get along with that, right? Because now it's easier, not easy, but easier to tie cyber resiliency with business resiliency, right? So being able to go, look, we can make sure you don't have that outage, right? Because we know all of our certificates are auto-renew or whatever, right? We have a process in place to make sure our websites certificates don't expire. Something as basic as that goes right to the cyber resiliency. Well, if you need a tool for that, right, you can drive that. So this is one of the big reasons that this I have found has been so widely adopted and accepted is because it doesn't care about what your peers do. It doesn't care about the industry. It's about you.
So do you envision, as we're going through this model with whatever group we selected, that we're going to be saying, you say you have the policy. What's that policy? We review the policy. You're saying you have 3% or 5% exceptions. Show me the asset inventory and what are the exceptions, or is it more a trust and maybe verify if you can, or I'm interviewing you and you're telling me and I'm, for the most part, accepting that?
So, trust but verify. Again, doing these year over year, right? The first time I do this, I would verify and validate all of their assertions, right? And then after that, you can go, okay, you have a foundation at least. It's getting that foundation that's critical. Now, if you review it and you all agree they're a 2, and then the next year they're a 2.8, and then the year after that they're a 5, okay, I'm going to go back and start looking at that data again. But generally, once you get that first round done, and again, you don't have to do the entire enterprise every time, right? And especially if you get that budget number and you finish that project and you go back and revisit that, and you go, okay, we were a 3, you spent this money, we put the work in, and now we're a 4, right? So it worked, we're good. There's a lot of goodwill built with that, with other people in the organization. So, last question. No? Oh, okay. So she said it's time. So no, but I'll be out in the hall. I'll answer any questions you want, but we're on the clock at RSA, so we got to go. Thank you.